now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Jane Golden is the executive director and has been the driving force behind the Philadelphia Mural Arts Program, overseeing its growth from a small city agency to the nation's largest mural program and a model for community development. Under Jane's direction, the Mural Arts Program has created almost 4,000 landmark works of public art through innovative collaborations with community-based organizations, city agencies, nonprofits, schools, the private sector, and philanthropies. I said earlier when I introduced Jane that when you leave tonight, I think you will feel like you can change the world, because Jane just is, effusive and energetic and can totally make you believe that anything is possible. So, not to set you up, Jane, but ladies and gentlemen, Jane Golden.
Hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to be here. We had a great afternoon. I met a lot of fantastic people who are doing wonderful work. And so tonight you're going to find out, we're going to talk about mural arts in Philadelphia. But really what we're going to talk about is what art can do. And there's a term being used now. We talked about it a little bit this afternoon, and that term is social practice. And it's being used by activists and academics and curators. And it means that the process of creating the art is as important as the art object, and then what happens afterwards has equal value. And we have seen that since we started doing work in the late 80s. And I feel very strongly that you need to stretch art as far as it can go, and when you think you've gone far enough, you need to go further. And so, because there is an inherent power in art to really change things. We wake up every day and we ask ourselves, how do we move the needle? What would that look like? What does impact mean to the city of Philadelphia? And then we go about and we do that work every single day. So, but it didn't happen overnight. It was a long, complicated process. And so we're going to start back in time to when I first started. So, my history is that I was someone who grew up in a mural-friendly family. I grew up with parents who talked a lot about the power of murals, the WPA, the Mexican muralists. And then I went to college in California. I went to Stanford. And I was a double major, fine art and political science. I was like an artist who thought about law school. And I was like, oh, should I go to law school? I'm really an artist. And then I was doing these really big paintings. And then I moved down to LA. And I saw these extraordinary murals everywhere in Los Angeles. And I was like, oh my God, they're so beautiful. And I thought, oh, I'd love to do a mural. And I'm like, but how would one do a mural? And then, my painting professors at Stanford were like, just get a job that's really boring and get a studio and paint. Don't do anything that takes away from your creative drive. And my parents are like, oh my God, I can't believe this advice. But I took their advice. I got a studio. I was painting, and I felt really isolated. I felt sort of disconnected from the world. So I kept thinking about these murals. And so one day, I got a job. I was pretty unhappy, and I opened the LA Times one day, and there was an article about the LA mural program. So I was like, oh my God, there's like a mural program here. So they said, we give out 10 grants a year to artists to do murals. I'm like, oh, that could be me. So I called them up, and I said, oh, I'm so excited. I'd love to do a mural. And they said, well, you're past the deadline. You can come back next year. I was like, oh, darn. I said, so what if I wasn't past the deadline? They were like, oh, you've got to find a wall, you've got to hire people from your neighborhood, you've got to do a design about a community issue. So I said, okay, thanks. So I hung up. Then I was like, So I started researching Santa Monica and found there had been a pier that the city had torn down, and people were really sad about it. I said, oh, I could do a design based on this pier. And then I walked around my neighborhood and I saw a really great wall, it was 20 feet high, 100 feet long. I said, I'm fantasizing, right? This mural I'm going to do could be on this wall. So I'm like, well, I'll just knock on the door. So I knock on the door, and this strange-looking guy with big orange hair answers. And there was a paper mache. I can't believe this is 1,000 years ago. I can't believe I remember this. There's a cow outside, a paper mache cow that said, "Love animals, don't eat them." I'm like, oh, I'm a vegetarian. This is a good sign. So I said to this guy, oh, hello, my name's Jane Golden. I would love to do a mural on your wall. He goes, okay. I said, no, seriously. I'm new in town, and I'd love to paint a mural here. So I said, would you like to see samples of my work? I have slides of murals I did at Stanford University. I sort of emphasized that as if it was going to mean something to him, which of course it did not. He said, whatever. So I'm like, seriously? You're going to let me, a stranger, do a mural on your big wall? He goes, That's right. So he goes, look, do you really need to say it again? He said, I've said yes. So I'm like, okay. So I pull out of I had this little paper, this little form I designed. It said, he filled in his name, give Jane Golden permission to do a mural. And I'm like, thank you, sir, thank you. And he's like, whatever. So he shuts the door, he's like, happy, I'm gone, right? So I go up the street, I'm like, I just stopped my neighbors. I go, would you paint a mural with me? And people are like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'm like, people in LA are so friendly, I can't believe it. So then I do this design, and I call back the city of LA, and I said, hello, this is Jane Golden. I've done everything you said. Can I do a mural? Can I apply for a mural? Would you reconsider? They said, no. Why would we reconsider for you? You're past the deadline. You were past the deadline 3 weeks ago. You're past the deadline today. And then I proceeded to call them every day for 3 months. We've made it through 4 mayoral administrations. I have to think tenacity counts for something. Finally, in December, I get a phone call, and I answer, hello, and I hear someone say, is this Jane Golden? I'm like, yes, it is. They said, we hope we never hear from you again. I'm like, who's this? They said, this is the LA Mural Program. You have the grant. So I was like, I have the grant was $300 to do a mural 20 feet high and 100 feet long. And I think because they hated me because I drove them so crazy, they gave me really bad paint and this rickety scaffolding. And so then I start painting this mural, and I'm standing on this corner, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so fantastic, because everything I thought about murals was theoretical. I had read about murals. But standing there talking about neighborhood issues and politics, it was so exciting. And I realized, art should be for everyone, and that is what is so wonderful about murals. It's about access. And then when the mural was finished, people are like, this is great. You should have a dedication. I'm like, great. And they said, it's LA, you should get a celebrity to dedicate it. I'm like, I am 22 from New Jersey. I don't know anybody famous. And they said, Jane Fonda lives up the street. I said, really? So I go up the street, I'm totally covered with paint, and I knock on her door, and she answers. She goes, hello. I said, hello, Jane Fonda. I said, so my name is Jane Golden, and I'm painting the mural. She stopped me. She goes, I love to see young women at work. I've seen you lift scaffolding and move paint, and what can I do? So I said, well, I would love you to cut the ribbon at the mural dedication. And she said, is there anything else I could do? Now I joke with my colleagues that, of course, now I'd ask her for a donation. But I said, you could bring friends. She said, fine. And she did. And 1,000 people showed up at this dedication. I'm like, oh my God, people love art. So I said, okay, I'm not going to law school. I'm going to paint murals. So I started to paint murals. And then I started working with kids on probation. And then I got really sick. I have lupus. And I was told, you're not going to live long. And so I came back east. I grew up in Margate, New Jersey. So as I started to get healthy, which took a long time, I thought to myself, I don't want to go back to LA. I want to stay in Philadelphia. I would like to go back. I'd like to work in Philly. So I said, well, maybe I'll go to law school now. And then one day I read in the newspaper about this new program in Philadelphia started by our former mayor, Wilson Goode, first African-American mayor. And could you go to the next slide? So Wilson Goode. So I just want to talk about Wilson Goode for a minute. So first of all, I think he was a visionary for many reasons. But anyway, I ended up sending my resume to Wilson Goode's office. And because I had read about this anti-graffiti network. And in the article, Wilson Goode is quoted saying, I'm starting this anti-graffiti network because Philly has a terrible graffiti problem. And I want to do it. I want to do a non-traditional program. I want to work with kids who are writing on walls. We're not just going to clean up the city just with white paint. We're going to actually try to get kids to help me clean up the city. And I was like, that's so interesting. And he goes, and a lot of young people really like art. I want to have an art program. So I was like, oh my God, that could be my job. So I send my resume, and I get a call from the head of arts and culture, and he said, Jane Golden, my name's Oliver Franklin, and I know your work in LA. Come in, let's talk. And Oliver Franklin sent me to this man. Whoop, let's go back. This guy right here, that's Tim Spencer. He was the new director of anti-graffiti. So so now I've talked myself into this, that I have to get this job. This is the job I want, although there really isn't a job there. So I go meet with Tim. Tim looks at my resume, and he goes, okay, it was like a 10-minute conversation. He said, you're hired. If you want, we're going to create a job for you. It's $12,000 a year. Your title will be field representative. You're going to have about 1,000 kids. They're graffiti writers. Sort of good luck. You know what I mean? It was a short conversation. So he goes under his desk and he goes, and here are your art supplies. And there was a box, and it was like magic markers and paper. And I walk out into the main office, and Tim says, let me take you to the art room, which had been a closet, I think, up until the day before. And he goes, I walk through this office, and it's total pandemonium. There are field representatives who are community organizers. There are police, and there are all these kids who are clearly graffiti writers who have backpacks that are making clicking sounds, and then field representatives are saying, what's in your backpack? And they go, books. And they go out in the hallway, and you hear, tss. I'm like, oh my God, they're writing on the walls of City Hall Annex. And all these police are around. It was like, imagine some police show on television. I kept thinking I was in an episode of Law and Order or something. You know what I mean? It was but I felt like my whole life I've loved reading crime novels. I felt like, oh, I'm living on the edge. There's something sort of crazy about this place. I like this chaos. But what I really liked was Wilson Good's vision. I love the fact that he had the courage to say, I'm going to take on this intractable problem in a non-traditional way. I love the fact that he put $6 million government money on the table, and he said that he's going to make a difference in something that was deemed a social epidemic. Because it did take courage, because you know what? Today, when government money, those words have become a bad word, guess what? Wilson Good knew that it was not going to happen any other way unless he very intentionally came up with a solution to do something. And he got it, that he could white out walls for the rest of his life, and graffiti was just going to come back. That this was about impacting young people in the city of Philadelphia. There was a crisis in communities throughout Philadelphia, communities that had been struggling, communities that didn't have a voice, communities that were not empowered. He came after Frank Rizzo. Think about the history of Philadelphia. It was really powerful to have our first African-American mayor, and I felt it was an honor to work for him. So I was like, I don't care. I don't care if it seems chaotic. I don't care if there's no roadmap or blueprint. Somehow I'm going to figure this out. So anyway, anti-graffiti was set up like this. There were these organizers, and then there was an amnesty pledge. You see why everyone here looks so happy? It's because they are swearing they're never going to write on walls for the rest of their life. In exchange for swearing, they had to do scrub time. After they did scrub time, if they liked art, they came to me. So I very quickly had to figure out what to do. Okay, next slide. So I thought to myself, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do murals because the city gave me an undercover police car. It was totally dented, and when you beeped the horn, the trunk flew open. It was very mysterious. It was completely a lemon. And they go, I was like, good news, I have a vehicle. Bad news, it hardly works. But that's okay. I can live with that. It was great. So I drive around. I'm looking at these graffiti pieces, tags, pieces. I'm like, okay, a lot of these kids have talent. So I was thinking, so I'm like, let me think about them. And I started to think, well, they're like wall hunters. They work outdoors. There are lots of, we have some, our skill sets are similar. They're like natural mural painters. So I went to Tim Spencer. I said, look, I want to have a mural component. He goes, that's fine, but you have to start offering programs. So I called up the Philadelphia Museum of Art, rec centers, churches, libraries. I said, I want to teach art at all these places. And then I said, okay, and now we're going to start doing murals. And I realized that I needed to understand why kids wrote on walls. If we were going to design a program that was palatable to them, I had to figure out why they were doing this. So I started talking to graffiti writers. And then my boss, Tim Spencer, calls me in one day and he goes, Jane, it occurs to me that you should have an assistant. I said, an assistant would be great. I would love an assistant. So I assumed my assistant would be from an art school. So, no. He had picked the assistant, and in walks this young man named Tran. And Tran was a notorious graffiti writer. I'm like, oh, Tran's my assistant. Wonder how this is going to go. So I look at Tran, and because there was a mandate from Wilson Good, you could not use spray paint, period, non-negotiable. So I said to Tran, so Tran, you're going to help me run the art program. He goes, yep, that's right. I said, okay, so you're not going to use spray paint. We're going to work with a brush. He goes, yep, we're going to work with a brush. He's really agreeable. And he goes, look, I can assure you, I'm very responsible. I have a part-time job. I said, really? I said, where do you work? He said, I work for SEPTA. That's our mass transit agency, as most of you probably know that. And he said, I do light maintenance in the tunnels. Light maintenance. There's a little sketchy term there, right? And later, after we bonded, he took me into the tunnels, and there were extraordinary graffiti pieces in the tunnels. I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't even be here. Anyway, so I said to Tran, okay, Tran, so together, we are going to create a mural program. So he goes, that is great. So I said, okay. So then Tran and I start doing some small murals. And then I have this idea that I want to set up a summit with the mayor, with all the big name graffiti writers, because I get it through Tran that there are these graffiti gangs, high-class lunatics out to bomb, the Bronx Bombers. And graffiti is a highly organized subculture, and they meet every Saturday in North Philly, and they plan their routes. It's way more organized than I ever thought. So I said to Tran, I'd like to meet these guys, the leaders of these groups, and then we're going to meet with the mayor. So Tran thought that was a good idea. So anyway, we planned our summit, and then on a Friday night, not too long after I met Tran, there's a knock on my door at my home, and I open the door, and there's Tran with 10 of his colleagues. And you know, I'm like, huh, Tran, because he knew where I lived because I had stopped at my house for art supplies. So I'm like, hello, and he goes, hello, Jane. He goes, I want to introduce you to some people. He said, this is Baby Rock and Cool Earl and Disco Duck and Knife and Pez and Cad and M.A. And I realized they are all on the most wanted posters in our office. I know that was corny, right? We had most wanted posters. Like, nobody was going to jail over this, really. It was a lot of drama. So I'm like, so I don't know what to do, right? Do I call the police? Of course not. Do I invite them in? Who knows? Well, I err on the side of being solicitous, so I can't believe what I said. I said, come in, we'll chat and have some tea. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like the most uncool person ever. So they come in, they sit down, and they go, look at all those art books. And I'm like, yes, I have lots of art books. And I start passing them around. And this one guy stands up and he goes, hello. He said, my name is Knife. So I could feel my spine stiffen, right? And I'm like, oh, hello, Knife. I didn't know it was Mr. Knife. You know what I mean? Like graffiti writers. I don't know. They're in my living room. And so he said, well, I have a couple questions for you. And he's so serious. And I'm like, please, ask away. What's on your mind? He goes, well, he said, I really want to know what you think about the color fields in Mark Rothko's paintings. And I really love William de Kooning's work. And but our all-time favorite is Andy Warhol. So I'm like, you guys just told me you dropped out of school in 10th grade. I said, so how do you know about the abstract expressionists? So he goes, well, he pulls out the magazine Art in America, and he goes, well, I've been stealing this since I was 10. So I'm like, you steal Art in America? Like, really, if I was going to steal a magazine, I don't know if I would steal Art in America. I'm like, that's fascinating. I'm like, I shouldn't be condoning theft, but I was like, that's like, I'm like, well, it's theft. That's bad. I did say that. And I'm like, what? Interesting. And then I got them all to open up their black books, and they had these most amazing drawings in their books, and they said that they've been drawing from comic books since they were young. And I have to say, it was like both an exciting and sobering moment. So I said to them, look, I would love you to work with anti-graffiti, but you can't use spray paint. They were like, well, then we're not working with you. So I said, oh, okay, so you dropped out of high school. Where are you going to be when you're 25? They said, well, like Keith Haring, like Futura. I said, you know what? I said, here's a little bit of a newsflash. Only a handful of artists will make it every year who can rely solely on their work. Why be used by galleries? Why not learn everything and then make choices about what you want to do? I said, how many of you are doing graffiti murals? How many of you are getting paid? How many of you have a contract? No, you don't have a contract. I said, so I will teach you how to get a contract. I said, and I'm not here to dictate to you about what's right and wrong. I can tell you we can't use spray paint. But so what? You all are good at that. You don't need me to teach you that. But have you worked on a mural? Have you done community organizing? Have you built a scaffolding? Have you gone to the Museum of Modern Art and looked at Mark Rothko's work in person? Because if you haven't done any of those things, then I think you should. Because I care about you, right? I don't care about the trends. Graffiti art is hot today. It may not be in 5 years. And where are you going to be? You've dropped out of high school. And they were like, well, maybe you have a point. I'm like, maybe. I said, you can do something artists in America dream about. You can get paid to paint. A big city mayor has committed resources to working with young people in the city. Millions of dollars are on the table for you. Not to hire a bunch of adults, for you. So if I were you, I would take advantage of it. And in 3 years from now, you want to go back to using spray, go back to using spray. It'll be your choice, but learn everything you can. Now, I had really, to be honest with you, I'm speaking as if I'm some kind of an authority. I was not. I didn't know exactly what I was doing because I had no experience in this. I had never had this was huge. So I was just like thinking, this is like a moral imperative to do the right thing by young people in the city, and I was hoping for the best. But I knew you're only as good as your word, and everything I was saying I better deliver on, or they had a right to turn their back on me. So I was like, so are you with me? I was like, please. So they were like, okay, we'll sign the pledge, we'll come in, we'll paint murals with you. I showed them murals from LA, Chicago, San Francisco. I was so excited. I was like enthusiastic. I guess I'm always enthusiastic. Anyway, so they left. And the next day I was on my way to work. And I'm driving down Broad Street. And I'm like a wall hunter. I noticed great blank walls. And there was like a great wall near my house. And I turn and I look and I see all these new graffiti tags on a wall near my house. So it says Tran, Baby Rock, Cool Earl, blah, blah, blah. And I know it's new graffiti because I've been around now, at least enough to know new graffiti. And then I see one addition that is huge. It's giant. It says Cool Jane. So I'm like, I go like that, like, what? This is a nightmare. No, maybe I'm dreaming. Maybe I'm still sleeping. And I go down Broad Street and I see Cool Jane, Cool Jane, Cool Jane, Cool Jane. I'm like, oh my God, there are like 30 of them. Oh, I'm gonna lose my job. So I get to work and I see Tran, the assistant. I said, Tran. I said, what is up with this? He goes, oh, it's a compliment. They really liked you. You're the first adult who ever talked to them. I'm like, why didn't they just say thanks? So I'm like totally in a tizzy. I'm like, I'm gonna lose my job. I said, the city gave me all this beige paint. I don't know what they thought I was gonna do with it. They're like, paint murals. I'm like, it's beige. So I'm like, look, I've got all this beige paint. We're gonna clean South Broad Street today. Get them on the phone. We're gonna, clean this street. So we get them on the phone. She's really mad. So they all show up, oddly enough, and we clean South Broad Street. And then I was like, you guys, this is serious. You got to sign the pledge. So anyway, we got off to a rocky start. Cool Janes went away. We got South Broad Street cleaned, and then we started to fly into action. We had classes at the art museum. We trained the kids in how to do murals, and then we started doing murals. And when you start to do murals, where do you begin? We drove around the city and asked people if they wanted murals. And you know what people said to us? Not really. We'd like jobs, we'd like housing. We're not really interested in art. So we would go back, and we would go back. And finally, in this part of North Philadelphia, Miss Rachel Bagby, who became one of my mentors, said to me, Jane Golden, you have to understand something. We are just trying to get by. And, the only visual stimulation we have here are billboards advertising alcohol and tobacco. And our kids are never going to have beauty, and we're never going to the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And art just doesn't factor into anything. And we were like, but Miss Bagby, what would you like? And she said, that's interesting. Things are usually done to us or not done. I said, look, this is the great thing about murals. What do you want on this wall? This is not about our vision. And she said, well, you know what? We grew up in the South. And we grew up on a farm. And we'd like our kids and grandkids to know about where we came from. So we said, done. So we went and we did it. And then after this, we did one of some women in the neighborhood had gone to Africa. They went to Mount Kilimanjaro. And we did that. And then we did something else. And then we did something else. And you know what I saw? I saw the power of art. I saw art become a catalyst. I saw that people would go from being on the sidelines, thinking that they could not make a difference in their neighborhood, become involved in a design process, and then start to see that mural come to life and feel that they could make a difference. And people start to shift their consciousness. Instead of seeing the neighborhood as a liability, they started to see potential. They started to see the gifts. They started to see the strength. And suddenly, like we do the mural, and then the lot that was filled with trash, people would say, well, we don't want to take this. And we were like, you're right, you shouldn't take it. What should we do? Let's call Philadelphia green. Let's get a garden. What about we want additional city services? You should get services. So we designed a resource guide to demystify city government. And it's like, suddenly we saw art do something that we never thought was possible. When I talk about that nexus of social change in art, this is no joke. We saw it firsthand, the catalytic power of art to create social change. The mural became a beacon and a focal point, a sign that people cared and things could change. In communities where the only other city employees were the police, we began to deliver art as a city service. It was revolutionary. It was revolutionary. We didn't have really any idea what was happening, what we were doing, only we saw these things unfold in a really positive way. And guess what? When you're in that position and you see things going right, we talked about this today, that is when you become ultra strategic. So we started doing one mural after the next. big figurative projects like this one, I am large, I can tame multitudes, a quote by Walt Whitman. And this one, Dr. J, which has become iconic. We did this with Ken Twitchell, who was a well-known muralist from Los Angeles. Ken, at the time, 1989 was getting $50,000 a mural. I had assisted him on a mural in downtown LA, and I called him up and I said, Ken, we don't have $50,000, we actually have two. We have $2,000 from the Arts Council to do a portrait mural. And he goes, well, actually, I'd like to do Dr. J in a suit. I said, why? He goes, because I want kids to think beyond sports. And we picked this wall, and you know what I love about this? I love this because this is what it looks like today. This is what it looked like in 1989. Nobody has ever touched this wall. The lot in front was a trash bin. There was trash up to here. We hauled it away, and people said, you know what, that mural's going to get graffitied. And if I had $1 for every cynic and naysayer, we would have an endowment at the Mural Arts Program. That's how many people said it's not going to work, except that it did, right? And Dr. J stands over this site now as a beacon. And what I love about this is that so many young people worked on this and brought this project to life. And now people come from all over the world to see this. Okay. So then, next slide. So then, what happens? So anti-graffiti, we do, I don't know, I think since '84 we've worked with 40,000 kids. So we work with tons of kids. And then in the 90s, our budget starts to get cut. Because sometimes when you do good things, your budget gets cut. It's just strange. Life is like that. So then my former boss dies. And I think, okay, it's my time. And I hear that the new mayor, Ed Rendell, he's going to restructure the anti-graffiti network. So I think, okay, so maybe now it's time for me to go to law school. So I apply to law school. I get into law school. My brother's a lawyer. He says, you shouldn't go to law school. I'm like, what do you mean I shouldn't go to law school? Of course I should go to law school. I'd taken all this time and studied for the LSAT. So he said, no. I think you should run an art program for the city. I said, but there isn't one. He said, start one. Go talk to Ed Rendell. So I went to see Ed Rendell, and I said to him, would you consider saving the little art program? And he said he would. He opened up a chart of city government. He said, if you could be anywhere in city government, where would you be? I said, I'd be with Mike DeBerardinis at the Department of Recreation, because he was so visionary. So Ed Rendell, and I'll always be thankful to him, he said, okay, come up with a name for yourselves. We said the Mural Arts Program. It's 1997 now. He said, Jane Golden, you're in charge. So I suddenly found ourselves, because of budget cuts, there were 5 of us. Our budget was about $100,000, and we were at the Department of Recreation. And I realized our budget was too small to do much. So I saw Mike DeBerardinis was raising private money to open up swimming pools. So I went to him and I said, can I do that? And he said, yes. So we formed a board, got a 501c3, and we started raising private money. More importantly, we suddenly found ourselves, we were a pro-art program. So we opened our doors to all kids, not just graffiti writers, and we started hiring emerging and established artists. And I want to tell you something. We started going 100 miles an hour, and in essence, we never looked back. So this is Jackie Robinson by Dave McShane. This is a peace wall we did in Grays Ferry. And here in a neighborhood where all communication between blacks and whites had shut down. There was a murder, and there were beatings. And we had a grant to do a peace project in Philly. And we said, we're going to do it in Grays Ferry. And people said, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're the most naive person if you think you can do a peace wall in Grays Ferry, because no one is going to talk to you. So there was a deputy mayor, Lillian Ray. Lillian's African American. Obviously, I'm white. We were a team. We go around and we'd knock on doors and we'd say to people, look, you're all saying the same thing. Everyone says you're being treated unfairly. Do a mural and show the world that things can change here. And people would go, slam the door. So Lily and I would look at each other and we'd go next, we go next, we go next. This took months and months and months. Finally, a group came together and they said, we want people's hands. So my husband's a filmmaker. He said, use real people's hands. I'll take the picture, we'll digitize the image and project it. I said, people are not going to come lean towards each other in Grays Ferry. He said, try it. So we did. We put up signs, lend us your hand. And we went to this church, and we called for people to be there at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, 6:30, 7 o'clock. I'm thinking, no one's showing, except people did. Young and old, black and white, came through the door and leaned towards each other and grabbed each other's hands. And we took the photo, and we digitized the image, and we painted this over a course of 6 weeks. When everybody in the world said violence was going to happen, that we would be hurt, and that the mural would be defaced. Only guess what? Nothing happened like that. The dedication was the most integrated event down there. We've done 10 major murals since then. And I love when people come from Grace Ferry because I like what they're talking about today, and that is not about race. They're talking about economic development. Some of the changes happen when we're there, and some changes happen when we're long gone. And I think that is fantastic because it shows us the powerful ripple effect of our work. There was a new mayor, John Street, who made us part of the Division of Social Services. That was key for us because suddenly we found ourselves working with kids who were truant, delinquent, started working in prisons, and started to really emphasize community development work. So our work started to get broader and deeper. And here we reclaimed an entire half a block, worked with the Urban Tree Connection and Philadelphia Green, and created a sacred space. This one is a beautiful newer project in a pocket park in Center City. And here, this is another new project at the Fleischer Art Memorial, right outside of Center City. And this one I put in because it's so important. This was painted by Keith Haring in 1989. We had the pleasure of actually meeting Keith Haring when we were the Anti-Graffiti Network. And he did this, and it started to deteriorate terribly. And then we received a grant from the Haring Foundation last year to restore it. And we also received another grant to reclaim the space in front and create a beautiful garden. This is by young people in our art education program. And this is a new one. It's a tribute to rowing in Philadelphia. I wanted you to see some unusual sites where we're working. And this is a new one by the artist Shepard Ferry. We now have a new initiative where we're working with well-known artists from around the country and the world to come to Philadelphia and do work and connect with kids in our art education program. And in art education, we're serving about 1,500 kids annually. We do very high impact residencies. Our programs go like this. There's the foundation program for middle school kids. There's emerging muralists for teens. And then as you become a junior in high school, you go into internship, apprenticeship, or our entrepreneurial program. And they do fantastic work. 100% of kids in our advanced programs graduate from high school. If you know the statistics of Philadelphia, that's really huge. And 85% of our kids are moving on to higher ed. We're really proud of that, and we help facilitate that next step in life, and we also provide scholarship opportunities. But I love the fact that they wrapped an entire fleet of recycling trucks. I like that they studied single-stream recycling. I like that they all learned Photoshop. I like that they studied Philadelphia at the turn of the century and looked at material that was made in the factories. And then we have these big belly solar trash cans that are all getting defaced now. And so our kids designed a series of litter-eating animals, and they have been working with animators to create designs for them. And then we also work with the food trucks, the lunch trucks, and this one actually won a prize at the Vendy Awards in New York. We were very proud of that. I'm proud of the kids who worked on that. And then we also bring in visiting artists for kids in our art ed program. And this is an artist collective from all over the country called Miss Rockaway Armada. And I love the name of this, How to Turn Anything into Something Else. It's all about transformation. And this is called Peace is a Haiku Song. We worked with the wonderful, incredible poet Sonia Sanchez, whose legacy she really wants to be about peacemaking. So we did haiku workshops throughout the city. Sonia worked with kids in our after-school program, and our kids created a beautiful book that you can get on our website. So again, it's like, how do we infuse rigor into what we offer our young people? And then we did mini murals. If you followed the mini murals, it led you to the big mural. And this is a brand new one. We worked with the poet Ursula Rucker and a wonderful photographer, Chip Thomas, who is from the Southwest. And this one is all the way live from the 215. This is Chris Stain from New York, a street artist. He got his start doing graffiti. And not only did he do this project, he also worked with the kids, and they designed a graphic novel. So we're adding all these other components, so it's multidisciplinary learning for our young people. And then this is we did with Freire, and there are people here from Freire and Wilmington, yay! And this one I love because this is made up of hundreds and hundreds of photographs taken by kids. So we now not only have after school and summer programs, but we've piloted a program with Freire that now we're expanding, where we're embedded in schools during the school day, where we work with all the 10th grade teachers and we merge art into the academic curriculum. Because a lot of kids are creative learners, but they articulate themselves through art. They might not be doing well in their other subjects, but what we saw with the graffiti writers for sure, and what we see with young people in our program is art is a way in, art is a lifeline, and we say just recognize that talent, right? And build on that. So this kids map their journey from all over the city to the school in Center City and their psychological journeys as well. And then we took over a neighborhood and we did a major project about the impact of homelessness on young people in the city of Philadelphia. It's staggering how many kids are homeless. And they face housing insecurity, and guess what? They're invisible and no one counts them. So we said, let's use art as a tool of advocacy. Let's work with kids in our art ed program. So we worked with 48 kids. We painted the entire neighborhood. And then next slide. We took over an empty house. We cut a deal with a developer. We said, look, this house is sitting here empty. We want to turn it into an art house. So we did art about the issue of homelessness. We partnered with the public radio station. We did an audio mural. So you walked into the house, you heard the voices of the kids. It was really profound. And then on the third floor, it was a resource room where people could learn about the issue. And this is a recent project called Journey to Home, where we took over a storefront, and for a year we've been offering programs on Lancaster Avenue, and we've moved kids from shelter into permanent housing. And then our behavioral health work, it's called the Porch Light Program. This is really important to us. In the city of Philadelphia, we have a mental health commissioner who is a visionary. He's from Yale. He said, we have a black box way of doing business. We send bureaucrats into neighborhoods, they knock on doors and they say, hi, I'm here from the city, I'm here to help you. And people say, I actually don't want to talk to you. I've received no services, I've received bad services. So Arthur Evans knows what I know, that when it comes to our city's sometimes more intractable problems, never count out the role of innovation and creativity to make a difference, because he has seen traditional interventions fail. And I know it. And I am thrilled that there are leaders in the city of Philadelphia who recognize the power of art to facilitate change. And so we started working with him on a hunch years ago. And then our projects got bigger and bigger. And then he assigned us this project. It was a methadone clinic. Look at it. Next. So what we did is we embedded ourselves in the basement. The basement was just horrible. We said, we're going to turn this into an artist studio. So we did. Then we said, we're going to offer people programs before they go into group therapy. And we did. Then the therapists came to us and they said, people seem to be more serious about group. Can you guys stay longer? So we're like, yeah, we'll stay longer. So then we got a little grant from Robert Wood Johnson to evaluate our impact. And the data was really good. So we said, what? We're going to apply to their local partnership program. And we did, and we got a $500,000 grant that we leveraged into $1.5 million so we could embed ourselves in provider agencies in some of the neighborhoods of the city that are struggling the most to deliver art as a service, both for the individual and the community. We have just finished a 4-year study by the Yale School of Medicine, and the data is good. The data about our impact is good. There was a control group. This was no joke. This was the intersection of art and science. And to hear that report 2 weeks ago was absolutely joyful, and we will be sharing it with our colleagues around the country. And the color of my voice, so before and after. This is all made of recycled materials because the whole idea was that no one should be discarded. No one is worthless. Everybody is beautiful. And then this poem was written by the entire community. We worked with women who had been homeless and their kids. And then we gave looms to shelters all over the city. People were weaving stories of their lives. So it's part tapestry, it's ceramic, it's photography, and it's paint. And then that's about the role of faith in the behavioral health community. And it's hard to tell, but there's a lot of glass in it, so when the light hits it, it just glistens. And then here we're working in South Philadelphia. We're working with the Burmese, Nepali, and Bhutanese population. And this whole project was about trauma and resilience, about working with people who are coming from another country, often war-torn, and what does that process of acclimation look like? Well, what happened is, next slide, we tapped into a whole community of women who are weavers. So, next slide. So what we did is we decided we would take over an empty storefront that was just filled with trash. And now this is part of our practice, working in hubs. And so we started offering painting and drawing, printmaking and mural making, and then we added sewing, cooking, dance, ESL, and social services. We've now been there for almost 2.5 years, and we don't want to go anywhere, right? because by embedding ourselves in the community, by creating a safe place where people can come and open up about their lives and feel they can talk about their lives in a way that is respected, there's something really wonderful that's happening. We've cleaned up the neighborhood, we've brought in additional city services, and we're helping the weavers sell their products. So in a few weeks, when Design Philadelphia happens in our city, guess what? This is going to be one of the hubs. And we're going to have a tour of the neighborhood, we're going to have work for sale, and the American Composers Forum is actually having a concert in front of the series of murals. And then this is Rise and Shine. The other side says Shine. So 1,000 people in recovery worked on this. It's 10 stories tall. You can see it from the Amtrak train. And it's painted lovingly. Every square is painted, and there are beautiful stories inside each square. So it's beautiful. It's a beacon on Broad Street, but what it means is huge. It's dignifying people's lives. It's saying to them, your life counts. Restorative justice. We started working in prisons years ago, and here we did a series at Graterford Prison, a maximum security prison. We worked with lifers. We worked with crime victims, victims advocates, and lifers to create a series of murals about the impact and consequences of violent crime. What's most exciting next about that project is that that was so catalytic that it was recognized by the Department of Corrections as an exemplary project, and they made our work at Graterford, the 5th largest maximum security prison in the country, a work program. So instead of making shoes or socks, the men who are there are creating beauty. They are creating 20 to 30 murals every year. And their messages, which is so powerful to young people, to their kids, to their sons, their daughters, their nieces and nephews, is this might be my life. I might be here forever. It does not have to be yours. And the men talk about the power of seeing that, talking to their kids about what they see around the city. Oh, Dad, I saw your mural at 4th and Dolphin. And they say for the first time, sometimes ever, their kids feel really proud of them. And they've been charged with trying to break the cycle of poverty. So they've become like a think tank. We bring out policy, people in policy, decision makers, politicians to the prison to talk about issues around crime and punishment, reconciliation. And then we embedded ourselves in 4 other prisons, and then around this time, this is 2008, we started a reentry program. When we talk about poverty in America, we have to talk about the incarceration rate in this country. Over 2 million people are incarcerated. So we strategically set up a project like this so every visioning session brings people who offer services with people who need services. Every paint session brings people together. Everything should be useful. Next. And this is a very recent mural. It's called Amplify. Isn't that beautiful? It's by our guild program with a lead artist. And Restored Spaces is all about transforming schools in our city. Too many schools in Philly look like prisons, and we say change it. We bring together architects, urban planners, ceramic artists, and artists. This is about global climate change. And we wrap around the entire school, and we build outdoor learning structures. And this is a seed mural. The seeds will eventually drop down, and flowers will grow. And that's at a neighborhood in West Philadelphia where we're going all around the school. Next. And then creative placemaking is a term that's being used a lot. I'm sure you're hearing it here in Wilmington. It's about how you use art to change a place. This is our Love Letter series by Stephen Powers, 50-second story murals you can see from the L train, all about love. He started out as a graffiti writer. He's now a famous artist. His work goes for a lot of money. And this is an amazing series. Please, we have tours every Saturday. Come up and take a tour. It's one of our most popular tours. What I love about this, we hired a New York team, a Philly team. We opened up a sign shop. We created jobs for a ton of people with this project. So it wasn't just about public art. It was also about workforce development. And then this is we did this it's called Light Drift. We worked with a team from MIT, and you could change the color of the orbs from the shore. Next. And this is on the airport, 85,000 square feet. I love this. It's about the dancer in all of us, and I like the fact that we're shifting the paradigm about how public art is made. There were lead artists at the top of the food chain, but who else worked on this? Kids in our art ed program from behavioral health and from the prison system. And the lead artist was a photographer, and he said, everybody is beautiful, everyone is photogenic. And then this is a group from Canada, AVAF. We're working with different street artists coming to Center City. We're creating quite a collection there as well. Next. And this is How and Nazem. They're from Berlin, but now they live in Brooklyn. And then this is a sculpture we just did at the Navy Yard with Virgil Marti. And then some special projects. This is about the impact of work on our lives. We worked with thousands of Philadelphians. This is metal, mosaic, and paint. And then here's Philly painting. We wrap color around 61 buildings at Germantown and Lehigh. This section of Philly is the second hungriest congressional district in the country. And the Commerce Department could not get in the door, and art led the way to other changes. We worked with two artists from Amsterdam who'd been painting in the favelas of Rio, who came to Philadelphia for this major project and embedded themselves in the community for 18 months. And then this is a very recent project we did along the Amtrak rail corridor. You might have heard of this. It's called Psyche Lustro. We work with Katerina Grossa, who is an abstract painter from Berlin. And it's bold and next. And she covered parts of the rail corridor that were it's so deteriorated. If you've ever gone from Philly to New York, you know this, or Wilmington to New York. It was unlike anything we've ever done, and we created these. There was a card. We had 20,000 seatback cards made, so there's an audio component. You could dial a number. The first track was the artist talking about her work as if you're in a museum. Track 2 was a discussion about the rail corridor and what does this mean for Philadelphia to be a post-industrial city. Track 3, we commissioned a composer to create an original score. Next. Okay, you can keep going. You can see that one by the community garden. And Neighborhood Time Exchange is a brand new artist residency. We've just announced on Lancaster Avenue. We're working with Broken City Lab, an artist collective from Canada. But we are hiring both local, national, and international artists. So if you're an artist who's here tonight, you should go on our website and read about it because it's pretty fascinating. It's that we will give artists time and space to do their work, and in exchange, they have to do something of social impact in this part of West Philadelphia. And just some facts. $3.4 million annually paid to artists. I think that's a significant contribution to the creative economy. Over 200 artists work for us every year. Jobs in restorative justice, 150 public artworks created every year across the city. 18,000 tour customers. People are coming to Philly to see the art, and we're always leveraging investments. Next. So finally, I just want to say there's a saying that I love, and that saying is, hope is believing in spite of the evidence and watching the evidence change. Watching the evidence change. That is truly the power and the privilege and the honor of doing this work, is that this seems like a slogan, art ignites change, but I want to tell you, from where I sit, I get to see the extraordinary power of art at work every day on the life of Philadelphia. Thank you. Oh, that was so nice. Thanks. Thank you. So questions?
Yeah, where's Cool Earl now?
Oh, Cool Earl. I don't know where Cool Earl is, but Cornbread is in Philly, and I just saw him last week. And Knife is a well-known poet. Okay. Questions? Yes. Correct.
Los Angeles is just restoring, but not creating.
Right. I think that they are starting to create again. What they did, which was really damaging, is they zoned murals as billboards, and that was devastating. Portland, Oregon did the same, and we were involved in Portland helping them get that lifted. So now LA has started to create again, but we're the largest program of its kind. And I did mention restoration a little bit, but we're restoring about 50 a year. And our preservation efforts are led by a great conservator from the Getty Museum. So we're trying to be really smart about how we do it. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I've been doing murals with you.
Yes.
However, I stopped doing murals because I feel like there is no advance. It's the same narrative over and over in console, so political, whatever you call it. So my point is, if you present something to the mural art now that is your
I think a lot of what you saw tonight was art for art.
Yes, yes.
I wouldn't say Katarina's work is narrative in any way. Oh, I actually think we've taken a lot more risks, and if you're interested in applying, you should, you should reach out to us. I think our work has broadened tremendously. Yes.
I was wondering, so you're from Philadelphia, and you started this program in Philadelphia. Is the point of your presentation tonight to try to start something similar in Wilmington?
Well, no, I mean, I think this is more informative so that you could hear about what we're doing in Philly. We are working with hundreds of cities around the country as consultants. I mean, we're really respectful of who's in the city. Like, we wouldn't assume, like, we can do it better or that our artists should come here and do the work. I mean, what we can do is give people the benefit of our experience, because it's a lot, and it's tricky, and it's complex, and we've learned to leverage money and navigate a lot of systems that are complex. And our program is a model of sustainability. I mean, I think the fact that we will probably make it through 5 mayors is just something that's not done all the time. So yes, I'm here as it's like a program that people are interested in because cities are looking at different aspects of our work. So, but that's really your call in Wilmington if you'd like to work with us or learn something or just be inspired tonight. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Yes.
So you mentioned that you had great initial support from the government, monetarily, at the beginning. What is your current budget? Is it mostly private donations at this time?
It's $8 million, and about 30% comes from government. And when I say 35% from government, 1.4 is general operating. Then we get a number of contracts. And then the rest we raise from foundations, corporations, individuals, and earned a little bit from earned income from consulting and from tours. But we think we could make more earned income from consulting because so many cities are calling now.
You have a tour bus for this?
We do. We don't have our own tour bus, but we work with Philadelphia Trolley Works. There are weekly tours, there are quarterly bike tours, and every weekend when the weather's nice, there are walking tours. Which we think is great because then, see, a lot of our artists who work with us, then they go on, and some of them are doing murals all over the world now. Like, so if this leads artists to a career that is beyond Philly, then that's like fantastic. So we think the tours are great because it shows off all the parts of Philly, right? Not just downtown, and says there's good stuff going on everywhere. And B, it highlights the work of our artists, which I think is also, and our kids. So I think that's fantastic. Other questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you again to Jane. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Of course, the visuals are fantastic, but the story behind how it all got started and where they are today is really important. There are materials behind this column in the center that Jane has brought, so if anyone wants to take something with them tonight, please feel free to do that. If you have not signed up to receive our monthly email newsletter about the Creative District, please go to our website, bigideaswilmington.com, and sign up so that you can stay in touch. Also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We are going to be upstairs socializing. There's going to be music, and so please stay. And please consider coming back. Our last creative chat for 2014 will be held on November 13th. Della Clark from the Enterprise Center in Philadelphia will be the presenter that night, talking about a number of their initiatives as a community development corporation, but in particular about their kitchen incubator space. So thank you all again, and we'll see you upstairs.